All right, we are about ready to geek out about making bid-winning proposal graphics using Agile methodologies. I'm going to give you a link at the very end of this to download these materials. Now, what the heck is Agile? Agile at its core is all about helping us navigate change. Change is coming faster and faster, and the goal is that we are okay with that change. So looking at Agile methodologies, there's about 8 that are well used. And of those 8, 2 most align with creating bid-winning proposal graphics. They most mirror best practices. Now, Kanban is great. Kanban is essentially a pull system where we pull the graphic needs through the gates, through backlog analysis, development, peer review, and ultimately release. Now, Kanban is great, but it isn't as ubiquitous or well-known as Scrum or Agile sprints in a Scrum cycle. What this is an iterative approach to development, and we're going to be using this iterative approach to develop proposal graphics. So when we talk about developing proposal graphics using Scrum, it's essentially discrete steps that are going to be iterative and repeated and improve over time. Now, it may look like a lot, but I promise when I walk through it, it's going to make all the sense in the world. To begin with, though, we want to show the mirrored roles because in proposal development, because Scrum is usually applied to software development and things of that nature, but we're applying it to the world of bids, proposals, and tender responses. So in the world of bids and proposals, a product owner is now a capture or sales manager. A Scrum Master is now a proposal manager, and a development team are now solution architects, designers, authors, subject matter experts, and reviewers. So first things first is we create what's called a product backlog, and that's run by the capture manager, who is essentially defining the scope of work using any of the tools you might use to capture this information, such as SharePoint or meeting software, anything like that. So we receive the RFP and we want to review it to find out of these requirements what might lend themselves well to a graphic. I'm looking at a few reasons. So number one would be if it's too complex to understand textually, I might identify it as a graphic. Also, if it's a critical success factor and I want it to stand out, I may make it a graphic. So what I'm anticipating based on this RFP are about 10 graphics. So the next step is what's called a sprint backlog, and that's going to be run by the proposal manager, and they're essentially determining the estimate or level of effort, and they're going to use tools like SharePoint, Excel. So they would create a way to capture and track any information that helps them estimate and make sure that they can execute in the timeline that they have. Now, in a proposal, you may find it'll look something like this, like an Excel document. And if you want to be really nerdy, you can use what's called a burn down chart, when basically what you do is you take that level of effort, look at the time that we have, and allocate hours to each one of those deliverables and track to see if we are going to meet those commitments for budget, schedule, things like that. So the next step, once we do a sprint backlog, is we do what's called sprint planning, and that's done by the proposal manager, and we're basically reviewing and deciding what we're going to do first, second, third, and fourth. So we take that tracking sheet and we say, you know what? Based on our needs, we should create the executive summary first. Macro to micro approach to creating proposal graphics makes all the sense in the world. Plus, it's one of the highest priority items. So once we've done the sprint planning, now it moves on to the development team who does discovery. So they're essentially looking into how we might explain our executive summary for help desk support. So it's a tiered help desk solution, and they're going to be using things like the internet, other subject matter experts, AI maybe, whatever they can use to help them come up with how they will execute this program at a very high level. So they would start doing their research and coming up with a narrative that supports that approach. So essentially we have a 3-tiered approach or solution. and we explain what each tier does, and if there are any supporting or foundational elements, we want to capture that too. Once we have that, once we've completed the discovery, and we're happy with it, we move on to messaging. Now, messaging is essentially us coming up with a way to package this solution, this executive summary or whatever graphic we're working on, so that it resonates with the audience, with the target audience. A technique I like to use is to follow some basic rules. So here are 3 of the 4 rules I typically follow. Number 1 is I want to make it easy. When I say make it easy, I mean we want to summarize and simplify our message. We don't want a paragraph. Number 2 is we want to take cognitive shortcuts. What I mean is there are 2 parts of the brain. There's the emotional part of the brain, that knee-jerk reaction we have of, oh, I like that, or I don't like it, or, oh, that looks innovative. That's the emotional response. And then the intellectual response with, oh, that makes sense. I believe what they said. So I take an M&M approach to this. The first M stands for motivator. So this speaks to the emotional part of the brain. This gives context to the means. So the means is how we do it, but the motivator is what the audience gets. And usually that's a pain, gain, or fear, that we're alleviating a fear, removing a pain, or giving them some benefit. The next rule is we want to be aware of something called the argument dilution effect. Basically what that means is weaker points dilute stronger points. So if I was trying to get a high five from you and I'd say, hey, I'll give you $100 and a painted rock if you give me a high five. Now, the brain automatically does this. It looks at the relative value of these. So on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the most valuable to us, we're going to ascribe a 10 to the $100 and maybe a 2 to the painted rock. So when our brain does this automatically, it also automatically averages the 2 and devalues the $100. So for that reason, I like to limit my motivators to the top 1, maybe 2, up to 3 motivators. After that, it starts to water everything down far, far, far too much. So let's take a look at one. We have our message with 99.9% resolution rate in 6.2 hours. DDS can be assured that IT tickets will be resolved in a timely manner using our innovative custom tiered help desk support model. Okay, I have a motivator. I have a means. We are doing a lot of things right, but we're using cognitive shortcuts. We're making sure that we don't have too many motivators. But what we didn't do is we didn't make it easy. There's an old saying, keep it simple, silly. So let's simplify that message. And so now it reads, resolve 99.9% of trouble tickets within 6.2 hours of creation. Motivator, boom, that's what I want. I'm paying attention. How are you going to do that? With our customized help desk solution. So now, of course, the audience will be asking 2 questions. What is your help desk solution and how does it deliver that motivator? And we're moving on to conceptualization. Now, of course, remember during discovery, we had the answers to those questions. So now what we're going to do is the development team is going to take that discovery information and it's going to start chunking it. It's going to say, of all this information, this is what I believe is the most important information to answer. What is our help desk solution and how will it help us respond and resolve 99.9% of trouble tickets within 6.2 hours? So what we have is our 3-tiered solution with some foundational elements. So now I have an idea of how many elements I need to show. I need to show 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my handy dandy cheat sheet. Now this is something in your downloads, and a graphic cheat sheet is inspiration. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, all right, I need to show architecture or structure, the tiers, or process or flow. And then it's step 1, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So I would be looking at graphic types that fit in this zone right here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start mocking it up. I'm going to say, all right, let's see if this will work, because there are certain nuances that each graphic type communicates that I won't know until I kind of see it in action. So maybe I'll do a pyramid graphic, or maybe I'll do a mountain graphic with a journey map, or maybe I'll do a isometric graphic showing the steps, or maybe I'll do a traditional graphic, or maybe a curved pie chart, or maybe I'll go with a 3D stepped graphic. You know what? I'm going to go with the 3D look. Once I pick a path forward, I further mature it. I'll sketch it out a little better. At the very least, what I care about is not making it look good. It doesn't matter if it looks like you drew it with your foot. Who cares? What I want to see is, will my content fit here? And if it doesn't, what accommodations do I need to make? So I start writing down my content to see how much real estate, approximately, the narrative that I've chunked out will take when I put this graphic in here, because sometimes you have font requirements. Sometimes the graphics have to be certain sizes. It just depends. So I want to make sure it fits within the space that I have, or reasonably looks like it would fit within the space that I have. Once I do that in the world of Agile, this is called the minimum viable product, meaning that heaven forbid we have to submit this. It is telling our story. It is the minimum viable product that we could ship in our proposal. Now, if you are dead set against sketching, which I highly, highly recommend that you just sketch it. It doesn't matter how good it looks. I'm showing off here. You don't have to do it like this. When we sketch it, I know that some people say, I can't do it. So what you'd want to do instead is maybe have a graphic asset library. Now, an example of that may be something in your organization. You have a library of assets that you can pull together to help visualize or help test whether that graphic type is going to work. A lot of our clients will ask us, 24-Hour Company, to create a custom graphic asset library for them. Now, of course, you can engage your graphic designer for this as well, so the graphic designer can help you work through this concept. Now, another option, if you don't have access to a pre-built or a custom-built graphic asset library, is you can go get one. So there's a tool that I helped create called Build a Graphic, and essentially what it is a giant library of over 10,000 proposal graphics that you can test out ideas. If you don't have access to in-house designers or access to 24-Hour Company who's always going to do it better, designers are always going to do it better, faster, cheaper, but welcome to the real world where you sometimes have to do it yourself. So I'm going to use Build a Graphic to test out these ideas, the pyramid graphic, that journey graphic up the mountain. Or maybe I want to test out the isometric graphic where we had those steps or quadrants. Or maybe I want to do a more traditional stair-stepped graphic, or that curved pie chart with the steps. Maybe I do that. But ultimately what I settled on was this. I thought this was the clearest explanation of our three-tiered approach. So the next thing I'm going to do after I conceptualize is I move on to rendering. Now I have to make the graphic. Again, this is the development team. Best case scenario, I'm handing this to a graphic designer. Doesn't matter whether they're in-house, whether they're outsourced. If they are experienced proposal designers, you can lean on them. But let's say you don't have access to an in-house designer. You don't have access to my company. You can't get them. So what I'm going to do in this instance is I'm going to use that Build a Graphic tool, grab the elements that I need, and customize it or tailor it to make sure that it tells my story. Of course, I would add any additional content necessary, and in this instance, I'm just using PowerPoint due to its ubiquity, not because it's the best graphics tool in the world. It's ubiquitous, and this particular tool, Build a Graphic, works within PowerPoint. So now I have my rendered graphic and I want to QC it. I want to do some quality control. So I'm going to make sure that it's compliant. There's no grammatical errors and things like that. So I'm going to look at it and look for hiccups. And son of a gun if I didn't find a gosh darn spelling error. So I'm going to fix that spelling error. Once I fix it, then I move on to getting my subject matter expert or my author to take a look at this. And they're looking at it from their perspective, making sure it works for them. And they may take a look at this graphic and say, hey, can we make these innovations stand out more? Yeah, we absolutely can. Or maybe, can we make this stand out more? Yep, you've got it. And the subject matter expert is happy with it. Wonderful. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to submit it for review. So this is the development team. So I'm going to submit all completed graphics into a repository wherever we go to have everything assembled. So I say, here's my finished graphic. I'm going to save it as a JPEG or PNG file. It gets inserted into the Word file, the PowerPoint file, the InDesign file, whatever we're using for review. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a sprint review. So this is, in the world of proposals, it might be called a color team review. So I'm going to review the graphic, get other people's points of view to make sure if I'm missing anything or I miscommunicated something or something's ambiguous. So I'll take a look at it. The team will take a look at it and say, hey, is this the user interface? Are these really differentiators? Are these numbers accurate? So I get that feedback. The next thing I'm going to do is move to the maximum value product. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at that input and I am going to resolve those questions or requests. I'm going to say, you know what? That is the user interface. Those are discriminators or differentiators, and that number is accurate. So I am going to put those to bed, and this now, my friends, is the maximum value product. So this is a winnable proposal graphic. This is a proposal graphic that will help us win. So that is going through the Agile process. But there's one last thing we want to do, and that's a review. And I caution you not to review the product itself, but rather review the process. I recommend we manage the process and not the people. So we look for ways to improve the process. So that is how we create bid-winning proposal graphics using the Agile Scrum approach to development. And using this iterative approach ensures that you can meet any changing needs in a dynamic environment over and over again. Now, I promised you a handout, so here is the handout. Do know that the word Agile is lowercase. It is case sensitive, the link. So if for any reason it doesn't work, it's just because you have a capitalization in there or an extra space. Please reach out to me or my company, 24-Hour Company. This is what we do all the time. We are such nerds. We love creating bid-winning proposal graphics, helping people architect bid-winning solutions during orals coaching, building out incredible presentations that win bids, and of course, a host of other creative services. Good luck and have an amazing day.